You know that eerie calm right before a storm? Not the wind or the thunder, just the stillness. That breathless pause where the world seems to hold its breath. Many fear it, mistake it for emptiness, for nothing happening. But what if that silence is the exact moment your life is whispering a new beginning? Most people overlook these in-between phases because there's no visible proof of change. No drama, no signs, just stillness. But deep within that stillness, your frequency is recalibrating. It's the unseen preparation for a massive shift. You're not frozen. You're forming. If your heart beats a little louder hearing this, that's no coincidence. That's resonance. So before we dive deeper, pause with me for just a second. If you feel this message tugging at your soul, consider subscribing. Not for the algorithm, but because this space is built to remind you of who you really are week after week. Let's get honest. The reason we often feel lost is because we've been taught to navigate reality with maps that don't work in the quantum. We chase clarity, but the field asks for trust. We seek outcomes, but the field mirrors essence. It's not broken. It's brilliant. It's just misunderstood. There's a hidden intelligence in your current confusion. It's not failure. It's a frequency mismatch. You're not off track, you're just off tune. That's a powerful distinction. You don't need a new plan. You need a new signal. Our culture glorifies movement, hustle, action, progress. But the quantum doesn't respond to how busy you are. It responds to how aligned you are. That means the most important work you'll ever do might look like stillness to the outside world. But inside, it's symphonic. Picture a radio scanning for a signal. It pauses, adjusts, fine-tunes until the station comes through clear. That's you right now. Not searching, not struggling, just tuning. The signal is already there. The song is already playing. You're just learning how to hear it. This idea might challenge everything you've been told. You've probably spent years trying to build a future, piece by piece like a puzzle. But what if your desired reality isn't a project? What if it's a frequency that's been waiting for you to match it? And here's the wildest part. The more you push, the more static you create. Because desire born in lack only amplifies lack. Think of it like yelling at a mirror. It won't smile until you do. The field doesn't obey effort. It mirrors embodiment. So the real question is, who are you being when no one's watching? Not who you pretend to be, not who you post about, but the version of you that lives in your silence. Because that version, that's the one the field responds to. And this is where people trip. They mistake identity for personality. But identity is vibrational. It's energetic. It's the core broadcast of your being. And until that changes, nothing else can. Affirmations won't override frequency. If you've ever wondered why the same habits repeat, despite your willpower, this is why. Because energy patterns don't break with discipline. They dissolve with coherence. Until your body, mind, and emotions sync to the same truth, you'll keep looping. That's why some moments feel like déjà vu. Like you've lived them before, because you have vibrationally. The field doesn't care if it's new or old. It just reflects your now. And if your now is rehearsing the past, the future never arrives. Here's a perspective shift. What if your manifestations aren't delayed? What if you're just broadcasting the version of you who doesn't believe they've arrived yet? That's not a delay. That's precision. The quantum never guesses. It listens. Let's disrupt another illusion. Waiting is not passive. It's powerful if done in alignment. When you wait with presence, with grounded certainty, the field bends time. What should take years collapses into weeks. But when you wait in doubt, it expands the gap. And that's why it's crucial to examine the vibration behind your patience. Is it rooted in trust or fear? Are you holding your frequency or holding your breath? Because those two postures might look the same, but they vibrate worlds apart. Let's bring it home. This moment, this exact breath, holds the power of 1,000 intentions. Not because you're doing anything extraordinary, but because you are being fully here, now. And that state, that's magnetic. Now ask yourself this. If I stopped proving, who would I be? If I stopped performing, what would remain? That silence, that presence. That's where your new reality begins. Not in the chase, in the clarity. There's a reason why you feel the pull towards something more, even when everything around you seems fine. It's not ambition. It's not dissatisfaction. It's memory. A soul memory of a version of you that already lives the life your current self is still trying to comprehend. And that memory doesn't speak in logic. It vibrates in longing. Most people think manifestation starts with a goal, but it actually starts with identity. Before the shift in results, there is a shift in being. Who you believe yourself to be determines the quantum channel you're tuned to. If you keep showing up as the echo of your past, the field has no choice but to mirror yesterday again. We are conditioned to ask for proof before we believe. But in the quantum, belief is the proof. It is the seed and the soil. The field doesn't negotiate with doubt. It amplifies certainty. And when that certainty radiates from your energy, not your words, reality has no choice but to respond. Let's get radically honest. You've said you want the change. You've journaled. You've meditated. You've even envisioned the outcome. But deep down, there's a part of you still rehearsing how it feels to be without it. That's not your fault. That's your survival self trying to protect you from disappointment. But safety built from fear becomes a prison. It keeps your nervous system locked in a loop of almost. And the most painful part? That version of you, the one who already has the love, the peace, the freedom, is not far away. It's not even in the future. It's vibrating now, waiting for your alignment. We were taught to chase, to strive, to work until it hurts. But what if the true work isn't external? What if it's internal permission? Permission to become who you already sense yourself to be, without apology or delay. Not through force, but through frequency. Every time you imagine a possibility and feel it as real, you're activating a neural and energetic imprint. But if you contradict that imprint the rest of the day with worry, comparison, or disbelief, the signal weakens. Not because you're wrong, but because you're broadcasting interference. Think of it like tuning into a frequency where the signal is crystal clear, but then walking into static by habit. The music didn't stop playing. You just drifted. That's how quantum collapse works, not based on intensity, but on consistency. The biggest shift doesn't happen when you say, I want it. It happens when you say, this is who I am now, without needing external proof, without conditions, without negotiation. That level of clarity sends a message to the field. Stabilize this identity. Mirror it fully. So how do you make that leap from wanting to being? Through choice. Subtle, sacred, daily choice. In how you walk, how you speak, how you breathe, how you say no to what's out of tune and yes to what matches your new rhythm. Those micro-decisions echo into quantum geometry. You don't have to be perfect. You have to be coherent. That means your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are aligned with the same version of you, not 50%. Not only during meditation, but as a lifestyle, as a declaration. The most magnetic people on this planet don't manifest with scripts. They manifest with embodiment. You feel their certainty, their presence, their calm, because they've stopped begging reality to change. They've changed themselves and the world simply caught up. And here's a liberating truth. You don't need the world to understand your shift. It's not for them. It's for you. Reality adjusts in response to vibrational authority, not popularity. So release the need to be validated. You weren't meant to be understood by the frequency you're leaving behind. This is where detachment becomes power. Not detachment from desire, but from outcome. From needing it to happen on your timeline, in your way, with your checklist. Because when your identity is fully calibrated, you don't chase. You attract. You resonate. Let's make it tactile. Start noticing how often you act as if it's not already done. The hesitation before you speak your truth. the tension when the bill arrives, the doubt when no one responds. Those moments are invitations, not to try harder but to remember deeper. When the old identity resurfaces, and it will, don't fight it. Recognize it. Bless it. Thank it for how it kept you safe. But then release it, because its job is complete. You're not abandoning your past. You're choosing a future your past could never imagine. Here's the paradox. When you stop needing the thing, it often arrives. Not because you gave up, but because you finally became someone who no longer requires it to feel whole. That's not detachment. That's mastery. That's vibrational sovereignty. Let's close this loop with a reflection. If your current life is a mirror, what identity is it reflecting? And if that identity doesn't match your vision, who would you need to become today, not next month, to shift the reflection? That answer isn't out there. It's encoded in you. Ever noticed how the moment right before everything changes often feels like nothing's working? You meditate more, you journal with passion, you affirm like your life depends on it, and yet, silence. Not a whisper from the universe. No signs. Just fog. It's in that fog that most give up. But what if that's not failure? What if that's the moment before the leap? Let's reframe that silence. It's not a void. It's a vacuum forming to pull you forward. When reality seems unresponsive, it's not rejecting you. It's realigning. Your frequency is shedding old anchors, and like a rocket escaping orbit, that takes force, friction, and faith. This phase is where most misread the signs. The loss of motivation, the return of old patterns, the weird dreams, emotional swings, the exhaustion. None of it means you're doing it wrong. It means your old timeline is collapsing. The ego calls it chaos, but the soul calls it preparation. If you're feeling like everything is unraveling, it is, and that's a good thing. You can't take old belief systems into a new identity. The field won't stabilize a version of you that still clings to safety disguised as struggle. You have to let go, not of desire, but of the self who doesn't believe it's already yours. The quantum doesn't care about effort. It responds to essence. You can't fake frequency. That's why you might be doing all the right things but feeling no shift. Because you're taking action from the same identity that created the current version of your life. The field sees through performance. Here's the hard truth. Your old identity is dying. And like anything facing extinction, it fights back. It uses logic. It recycles fears. It whispers, "This is dangerous," when you're about to break free, not because it's evil, but because it was built to keep you safe inside the known. This is why that moment of collapse feels so lonely. Not because you're isolated, but because you're in transition. You're between frequencies. The old world is fading, and the new one hasn't solidified yet. It's not emptiness. It's creative space. And in that space, the universe watches. Not with judgment, but precision. Who are you in the void? Do you revert? Do you react? Or do you remain centered, faithful, even while everything external screams, "Not yet"? That's the test, if there is one. Not from the universe, but from your own coherence. The most magnetic shift happens when you stop looking for signs and become one. When you no longer ask, "Is it working?" and instead live as if it already has. That's not delusion. That's vibrational leadership. That's the posture of quantum mastery. This isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing courage anyway. The old self will tremble. Let it. The nervous system will resist. Breathe through it. The mind will beg for guarantees. Offer it none. Just presence. Just faith. You may feel like you're breaking down, but you're breaking open. Your nervous system is shedding the armor of old beliefs, and the field feels that clarity. That's when it begins to bend. Subtly, silently, then suddenly. You might begin to notice things you used to tolerate now feel unbearable. Not because the world changed, but because you did. The shift isn't out there. It's in how you show up to it. New boundaries form. New standards rise. New magnetism awakens. But here's where you must stay alert. As the new reality starts to take shape, echoes of the old will return, not to test you, but to ask, are you really done with this? The temptation to repeat is strong, not because it's true, but because it's familiar. So, how do you hold the line? Not by fighting, but by remembering. Remembering the identity you're anchoring, the vibration you've chosen, the signal you're broadcasting. That memory is your map. That certainty is your compass. If you're still here, still watching, still feeling this transmission in your bones, pause with me, because your energy matters. Drop a comment below and tell us, what are you letting go of right now that no longer fits the version of you you're becoming? Speak it, anchor it. This community is here to witness you. And if this message is striking a chord, take a breath and subscribe. Not for me, for you. For the part of you that's choosing to show up, align, and shift regardless of proof. That's real power. That's real remembering. And you're not doing it alone. So let me ask you this. If the universe already said yes, how would you move today? Not someday, today. Let that question echo through your being. Let it shape your next step. Because that step might just be the one that bends your reality. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you're no longer asking, when will it happen? Instead, you're living as though it already did. Not pretending, not forcing, just flowing from a deep knowing. That's not fantasy. That's the frequency of embodiment. And it's available to you now before the evidence, before the applause. Most people wait for proof to believe. But in quantum reality, belief precedes proof. This is not about wishful thinking. It's about energetic congruence. When your identity aligns with the frequency of your desires, the external must eventually match. Not by magic, but by mathematics. Embodiment is not about faking confidence. It's about choosing presence. It's about being so vibrationally stable in your truth that you no longer seek signs to confirm it. You are the sign, the confirmation, the walking frequency of fulfillment. Let's be clear, this isn't about ignoring your current reality. It's about no longer letting it define you. The version of you who still waits for permission will always find reasons to hesitate. But the version of you who acts from knowing, that one leads timelines. This requires a level of self-trust most have never practiced. Because society trained you to outsource authority, to ask others if you're ready, to wait for circumstances to align. But embodiment bypasses all of that. It says, I am now who I used to think I had to become. This shift is subtle, quiet, but it's seismic in impact. You start making decisions not based on fear, but based on frequency. You stop calculating outcomes and start calibrating energy. The field doesn't need your strategy. It needs your signal. That's why action must come from alignment, not anxiety. When you take action to prove something, you reinforce lack. But when you act from embodiment, you're simply expressing what's already true vibrationally. It's no longer effort, it's evidence. Pause for a moment and ask yourself this. Am I still trying to convince reality? Or am I living as though it's already convinced? That question will show you exactly where your frequency stands. And from that awareness, you can choose again. This path doesn't require perfection. It requires repetition. Remember, coherence isn't about getting it right every time. It's about returning to your signal, again and again, until it becomes your new normal. Think of a tuning fork. It doesn't argue with static. It just resonates consistently until the environment shifts to match its tone. That's embodiment. You don't hustle the field. You hold the field. And in doing so, you lead it. When you embody your new identity fully, reality doesn't rush in all at once. It arrives gradually in waves of confirmation. A conversation that feels lighter. An opportunity that feels aligned. A moment of peace where there used to be panic. These are not coincidences. They are echoes of your new broadcast. And here's the beautiful irony. By the time the thing manifests, you don't need it. because you already became the version of you who has it. That's when reality reflects without resistance. That's when the shift becomes visible. We've been told to visualize the life we want, but few talk about being the person who lives that life. Not as a future fantasy, but as a present identity. That's where true manifestation begins, not in the mind, but in the body. In the way you walk, breathe, decide. Embodiment doesn't mean denying your emotions. It means guiding them, holding space for the doubt without feeding it, acknowledging fear without letting it drive. That's emotional sovereignty. That's mastery in motion. This is where many people relapse, not because they lack discipline, but because they seek confirmation too soon. The field moves on consistency, so ask yourself, can I hold this frequency even when nothing external validates it yet? That's the mark of someone who leads with energy. You stop needing to explain yourself. You stop broadcasting desperation. You simply are. And that state, that's the most potent magnetic field you can generate. So let's bring this into your life. Where, right now, are you still seeking permission to embody the next version of you? And what would shift if you gave yourself that permission, fully, unapologetically, today? Because here's the truth. Embodiment isn't the end of the journey. It's the threshold. Once you become the energy of your desire, the game changes. You stop manifesting for results. You start manifesting from resonance. And that shift, that's the portal. There comes a moment when you no longer chase the vision, you live it. Not because it magically appeared, but because you became the person who no longer needs it to feel whole. That's the final shift. When manifestation turns into expression. When life stops being something you attract and starts being something you transmit. You walk differently, speak with grounded clarity. Not because you're performing a role, but because your nervous system finally believes it's safe to expand. Safety in abundance, safety in love, safety in joy. This is the real transformation, when your system no longer flinches at receiving. And in this space, miracles aren't rare. They're normalized. You stop labeling synchronicities as signs and start recognizing them as feedback. Feedback from a field that has always responded to your essence. Not your words, not your rituals, but your frequency. This doesn't mean every day feels blissful. It means every day feels anchored. Even in chaos, your center holds. Because you've stopped reacting and started radiating. You've stopped demanding and started embodying. That's what coherence feels like. Stability without stagnation. You become the kind of person people can't quite explain but always feel drawn to. Your energy speaks before you do. You enter a room and shift the emotional temperature, not by effort but by being. That's not charisma. That's coherence. And this is where the field begins to reorganize around you. Opportunities show up not as luck, but as alignment. The right people, the right timing, the right messages. They were always there. You just weren't a match for them until now. When you reach this point, the idea of waiting for manifestation dissolves. You realize the thing you wanted was just a symbol. What you really desired was the version of you who could hold it with grace. And now that version is here. But let's ground this, because sustaining this frequency requires care. Not fear-driven obsession, but conscious relationship. How you think, how you speak, how you rest, all of it sends signals. Your entire lifestyle becomes a living transmission. So how do you maintain this new state? You remember, every day, every breath, you come back, you pause, you choose again and again, not because you're lost, but because the world will try to pull you back into forgetting. Your job isn't to fight it, it's to stay tuned. This is what it means to live from the quantum, to choose resonance over resistance, to build timelines from embodiment, not effort. You don't hustle for the life you want. You become it, and that, in turn, reshapes your world. Think of it like a sun. It doesn't chase planets. It radiates so powerfully that they orbit naturally. That's you. When your frequency is clear and stable, reality starts moving around you. Not the other way around. And still, the path isn't linear. You will forget. You'll have days that feel foggy. But each time you remember again, the frequency strengthens. That's how identity solidifies. Not through perfection, but through return. Return to your signal. Return to your truth. Return to your power. Because the moment you stop performing and start being, the field stops reflecting shadows and begins mirroring light. So here's a question to carry with you. Who would I be if I never again questioned whether it's possible? Let that question linger. Let it reshape how you walk into the next moment. Let it anchor the next version of your timeline. And now, before we close this portal, pause. Not to reflect, but to embody. Feel your breath, your presence, your power. You're not chasing anything anymore. You're transmitting, and the field is listening. If this journey resonated, don't just disappear. Subscribe to the channel, not as a favor, but as a declaration. This space is your reminder, your mirror, your field of coherence. We're not here just to watch transformation. We're here to live it together. Drop into the comments and share your frequency. What part of you is rising right now? What old pattern are you releasing? What truth did you remember? This isn't just content. It's communion, and your voice belongs in this vibration. If this content moved you, share it. With a friend, a partner, someone who's been feeling the shift but didn't have the words for it yet. And above all, let us know, what insight landed deepest for you? What will you embody starting today? This channel isn't here to teach. It's here to activate, to remind you of the frequency you've always carried. And if you're still reading this, still watching, still feeling, then you've already tuned in. Welcome home.